My name is Chloe Anderson, and for most of my life, I believed love was something you earned with achievement. In our house in Nashville, Tennessee, failure wasn't an option. It was a stain, and I wore that stain like second skin. The night everything changed started like any other Sunday dinner. The table gleamed under the chandelier. My mother's perfect roast chicken sat between bowls of mashed potatoes, and my father's laughter filled the air. It should have felt like home. Instead, it felt like an interview I hadn't prepared for. My brother Ethan was talking about his latest courtroom victory, his wife Grace smiling beside him, their 5-year-old son Caleb stacking peas on his fork. My parents hung on every word, pride softening their faces. Then Mom turned to me. "So, Chloe, what are you working on these days?" I straightened in my chair. "I'm producing a short documentary about local shelters and how—" Dad cut in before I finished. "That's nice, honey, but when are you going to get a real job?" The room went quiet. Ethan looked down. Grace shifted uncomfortably. I swallowed hard. "It is real. I have clients and—" Mom's sigh sliced through my sentence. "We expected more from you." 6 words. That's all it took to shrink me. Their words landed like a punch I couldn't dodge. I smiled tightly, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside, my chest was burning. I glanced at Grandma June, sitting at the end of the table, her silver hair glowing under the light. She gave me that look, the one that said, "Don't lose yourself for their approval." She'd been the only one who believed in my creative spark since I was little, when I used to film her humming country songs in her garden. I forced myself to laugh along with the others, pretending it was fine, but I could feel the distance between us widen with every clink of silverware. When dinner ended, Dad stood, patting his brother Ethan's shoulder. "That's how you build a future," he said proudly. Then he turned to me, voice flat. "You should take notes from your brother." Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, more like the sound of glass underfoot. Driving home that night, the city lights blurred through my windshield. I kept hearing their voices. "We expected more from you. When are you getting a real job?" Each echo dug deeper until silence felt heavier than sound. I pulled over near the river, rolled down my window, and let the cool air hit my face. Somewhere, far off, I could hear a street musician playing the same tune Grandma June used to sing. It made my throat tighten. That's when I realized how small I'd made myself trying to fit inside their version of success. Before I go further, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever tried to earn love that should have been unconditional? If you have, you're not alone. Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever had to fight for your worth, hit subscribe, because here we speak our truth together. That night, I promised myself something would change. I didn't know how yet, but I couldn't keep living as a footnote in my own story. When I got home, I found a voicemail from Grandma June. "Sweetheart, don't let their noise drown your music." Her voice crackled through the speaker. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding my phone to my chest, tears finally spilling. I thought about all the Sunday dinners where my words went unheard, the years I'd spent trying to be enough. Somewhere between those tears, a quiet determination began to form. Faint, but alive. They might never see me the way I hoped, but maybe I could make them see something they couldn't ignore. I didn't know it then, but that dinner, their laughter, their dismissal, my grandmother's whisper, was the beginning of the end. The night I stopped trying to be their perfect daughter and started becoming my own person.
When I was little, I thought love looked like applause. If you made straight A's, Dad smiled. If you won the debate, Mom bragged. But if you colored outside the lines, If you dreamed instead of calculated, you were on your own. Growing up in Nashville wasn't bad. It just felt small when you lived under the weight of expectations. My dad, Dr. Richard Anderson, was a respected surgeon. People whispered his name like it carried gold. My mom, Linda, taught sociology at the university, known for her logic and discipline. And then there was Ethan, my older brother, the golden one. He was the kind of kid who made life look easy. Varsity captain, Harvard graduate, top lawyer at 31. He didn't just meet expectations, he defined them. Me? I was the one who told stories, who saw meaning in light and sound and movement. I was the kid filming fireflies in jars and interviewing the neighbors about their dogs. While Ethan chased medals, I chased moments. Dad used to say, "That's cute, Chloe, but someday reality will hit." It hit, all right, every time I tried to share something that mattered to me. After college, I didn't go to grad school. I started freelancing, editing wedding videos, making small documentaries for nonprofits. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. Still, every call home ended the same way. Any plans for a steady job? Health insurance yet? You can't live off dreams, sweetheart. It's strange how repetition dulls pain until one day it doesn't. The older I got, the more their voices became part of mine. Every time I uploaded a video, I heard Dad's sigh. Every time a client paid late, I heard Mom's disappointment. Even success didn't feel like success. It felt like trying to fill a bottomless pit. That's when Nancy Collins, our neighbor, started checking in on me. She was in her 60s, a retired journalist who'd seen the world. Sometimes she'd invite me for tea and say things like, "You don't need their permission to matter." Her house smelled like cinnamon and old books, and I could breathe there. Then there was Grandma June. She'd call once a week, humming country tunes before speaking. "Your creativity is your strength," she'd say. "The world needs stories with heart." Those words were a soft place to land, but even her voice couldn't drown out my parents' silence. At family gatherings, it was always the same choreography. Dad talking about Ethan's latest win, Mom showing photos of Caleb, everyone nodding, smiling, clinking glasses. I'd sit quietly, waiting for someone to ask about me. They rarely did. One Christmas, I brought a short film I'd made about kindness, a compilation of strangers helping strangers. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would touch them. After the credits rolled, the room was silent for a beat. Then Mom said, "That's nice, dear, but have you thought about grad school?" That moment, more than any other, taught me how easily people can dismiss what they don't understand. I stopped bringing up my work after that. I smiled through dinners, laughed when I needed to, played my part. But inside something was breaking. Quietly, slowly, like a thread being pulled loose one fiber at a time. Still, there were flickers of hope. June's faith in me, Nancy's quiet nods, even my old college friend Ben Rivera, who often helped me shoot videos, reminding me, "Art's not a hobby, Chloe. It's truth with a lens." Their belief kept me afloat, even as my parents' approval sank out of reach. I didn't know it yet, but those small gestures, the tea with Nancy, the late-night calls with Grandma June, the editing sessions with Ben, were building something inside me, a quiet strength, a voice that would soon refuse to stay silent.
A few months after that Christmas, Grandma June called with a spark in her voice I hadn't heard in years. "Guess what, sugar? I'm turning 83 this spring and I want to celebrate big." The idea hit me instantly. A documentary. A film not just for her, but for everyone who'd forgotten what real love and resilience looked like. I'd call it The Voice That Raised Us. I told June about it, and she chuckled. "If you think anyone wants to hear an old lady sing off-key, you're braver than I thought." But she agreed, and I began planning. This was it, the project that could finally prove my work meant something. I spent weeks interviewing June in her tiny yellow kitchen, the smell of cornbread and peppermint tea filling the air. Her stories were gold. Tales of singing barefoot in county fairs, raising kids on little money but endless faith. Her laughter was my soundtrack. Nancy Collins gave me old photos, black and white snapshots of June on stage, smiling wide, her eyes full of fire. Ben Rivera composed soft guitar tracks to match the rhythm of her stories. Every night I sat at my laptop editing until dawn. The footage glowed with life. June's voice cracked when she sang, but it was the kind of crack that makes you feel something. I layered her laughter over fading sunsets, her wrinkles over grainy home videos. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for once, I was proud. I showed a short clip to my parents one Sunday when they stopped by. Dad barely looked up from his phone. "That's sweet, Chloe, but what's the plan after this? You can't live like this forever." Mom added, "Your brother's just been offered partner at his firm. Isn't that wonderful?" Her tone made it clear that was success. Not me, not this. I clenched my jaw, forcing a smile. Yeah, wonderful. Inside, something snapped. Not in a screaming way, more like a quiet, trembling quake that starts small but changes the ground beneath you. I stopped expecting them to understand. Instead, I started working harder. I filmed June's friends, neighbors, choir members, even her old record producer who cried when he saw her again. I edited between shifts, skipped sleep, lived off coffee and adrenaline. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the dark laptop screen, tired eyes, messy hair, but alive. And I'd whisper, "You're enough. Keep going." When I finally finished, the 25-minute film felt like my soul in pixels. It wasn't just about June, it was about generations of women who'd been told they weren't enough, who'd loved deeply and fought quietly. I called my parents, excited. "I'm premiering the film at Grandma's birthday dinner next week. I'd love for you both to come early." Mom's voice was cool. "We'll see. It's a busy week." Dad said, "Don't make it too long, all right? People have short attention spans." I hung up, my excitement sinking like a stone. For years, I'd tried to earn their respect by playing by their rules, smiling, being polite, staying small. But the documentary changed something in me. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I was chasing truth. Still, I hoped. God, I hoped that maybe this time they'd see me. June deserved a tribute that meant something. I wanted my family to see her the way I did, strong, warm, alive. And maybe if they saw her through my eyes, they'd finally see me. What I didn't know was that this film, the one I made out of love, would soon light the fuse that blew everything open. The night of Grandma June's birthday arrived like a quiet storm, soft on the surface but heavy underneath. The house was glowing with fairy lights and laughter. Plates clattered, the smell of barbecue and sweet tea filled the air, and for once, everyone seemed genuinely happy. I'd spent the entire morning setting up the projector in the living room, testing the sound, triple-checking every cable. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like another guest in the room. June sat in her favorite armchair, radiant in a pale blue dress. She looked at me with that proud smile and whispered, "Let's show them who we are, sugar." When the lights dimmed, silence fell. The screen came alive, grainy footage of June at 17, her voice young and clear, singing under string lights in a county fair. The crowd chuckled, some teared up. Then came her stories, raising kids on food stamps, losing grandpa early, but never losing hope. Every laugh, every tear was exactly how I imagined it. When the credits rolled, applause filled the room. June stood, hugging me tightly. "You gave me my life back," she said, trembling. I wanted to freeze that moment forever. But then I saw my parents. Dad sat stiffly, expression unreadable. Mom was scrolling through her phone. Neither clapped, neither smiled. June turned toward them. "Wasn't that beautiful?" she asked. Mom looked up and forced a polite grin. "It was nice," she said. Such a cute hobby. Dad added, it's good practice, I suppose. Maybe someday you'll use that talent in a real job? The laughter and warmth in the room evaporated. Everyone heard it. The silence that followed was louder than any applause. I stood frozen, the glow of the projector washing over me. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my cheeks burning. My parents' voices blurred into background noise as I gathered my laptop, pretending not to care. Nancy caught my eye from across the room. Her expression, fury wrapped in sympathy, said everything. Ben started to move toward me, but I shook my head. I didn't want witnesses to my humiliation. Later, as guests left and dishes clinked in the sink, I found myself standing in the hallway near my parents' study. Their voices drifted through the half-closed door. She'll end up alone, Mom said, still chasing childish dreams. Dad sighed. We gave her every opportunity. She just doesn't have what it takes. I froze. My hand started trembling, phone still in my palm. I didn't plan to do it. I just hit record. Something deep inside me whispered, remember this. They didn't know I was there. They kept talking, their words like stones. Ethan makes us proud. She's an embarrassment. I don't know what we did wrong. Each sentence cut deeper until I couldn't breathe. I slipped away, shutting myself in the guest room, my heart racing. The recording was still going. I replayed the last few seconds, Mom's voice sharp and cold. She'll never be enough. That was it. The sentence that broke me. I sank to the floor, phone clutched to my chest, tears spilling freely. For 29 years, I'd tried to earn their love through work, kindness, restraint. But their words made it clear it was never about love. It was about control. The recording kept playing, their voices echoing in the dark room. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. Silence had protected them. And I had been the one keeping their cruelty hidden. As dawn crept through the curtains, I sat on the carpet, drained, empty, but somehow awake. That night, a new thought took. If truth is all I have left, then truth is what I'll use. I didn't know what would come next, only that I'd stopped being afraid of the noise.
The morning after June's birthday, sunlight streamed through the blinds like it was mocking me, too bright for a night that had burned me hollow. I sat at the kitchen table, headphones on, replaying the recording again. Every word stabbed, but I couldn't stop listening. She'll never be enough. She's wasting her life. Ethan makes us proud. Each sentence was a nail sealing the coffin of whatever relationship I thought we had. I wanted to delete it, to pretend it didn't happen, but my thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. Then I pressed save. I didn't know why yet. Maybe it was instinct, maybe survival, but a quiet voice inside whispered, keep it. This is the truth they hide behind their smiles. I turned off my phone and stared at the empty kitchen. The house smelled like leftover barbecue and regret. June's laughter from the night before echoed in my memory, the way she'd hugged me, proud, unaware of what had been said after. That thought broke me again, but this time the tears felt different, not weak, cleansing. Around noon, Nancy knocked on the door, holding a thermos of coffee. Didn't see you after the party, she said softly. I tried to smile, needed air. She sat across from me, studying my face. I know that look, the one that says you've been cut open and you're still trying to make it look graceful. That did it. I told her everything. About the study, the recording, the words I could never unhear. Nancy listened without interrupting, just nodding, her eyes fierce and kind all at once. When she finished, she leaned forward. You've been quiet too long, honey. Maybe it's time they hear themselves for once. Her words struck something deep. That night, I played the recording to Ben.
We sat in his tiny studio, surrounded by tripods and coffee cups, the glow of his computer screen lighting our faces. When it ended, he rubbed his jaw, shaking his head. "They said that to you?" I nodded. He exhaled slowly. "Then it's time to stop begging for their love. You've got proof, Chloe. Proof of who they really are." Proof. The word felt powerful, heavy, alive. Still, fear gnawed at me. "What if it destroys the family?" I asked. Ben met my eyes. "They already destroyed it. You're just shining a light on the ashes." I sat with that for a long time. Later that week, I visited June. She was sitting on her porch swing, sunlight dancing across her wrinkled hands. I wanted to protect her from the ugliness, but she saw right through me. "Your mama said something, didn't she?" she asked gently. I hesitated, then nodded. She sighed. "I always hoped they'd learn grace, but pride's a heavy chain." Then she looked straight at me, her eyes sharp. "Sunshine, silence keeps us small. If they've built their world on lies, maybe it's time for the walls to fall." Her voice, trembling yet steady, was the permission I didn't know I needed. That night I made my decision. I backed up the recording on 3 different drives, labeling it simply truth.mp3. Not revenge, not drama, just truth. I began planning. The next family gathering was coming soon, Sunday brunch at my parents' house. Same laughter, same routine, same stage where I'd been silent my whole life. Not this time. This time, they'd hear every word they said, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I wanted to stop hurting myself. As I lay in bed that night, my heart finally felt steady. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing them. I was afraid of losing me. And I'd spent too long pretending I didn't matter.
Sunday came faster than I expected. The familiar scent of my mother's lavender candles filled the house. The laughter, the polished silverware, the soft hum of country music, it all looked the same. But I wasn't the same. I kept my phone in my pocket, the file truth.mp3 queued and ready. My pulse thrummed beneath my skin like a drumbeat counting down. Ethan was already there, charming as ever, pouring mimosas for everyone. Grace laughed beside him, and little Caleb raced toy cars across the dining table. Dad hovered near the kitchen, bragging about a recent surgery. Mom adjusted the napkins twice, control disguised as care. And me? I was quiet, observing, breathing, waiting. "Chloe, sweetheart, you look tired," Mom said, her tone sweet but sharp underneath. "I've been working," I replied evenly. Dad smiled faintly. "Still with that video thing?" "Still," I said. He chuckled. "Well, at least you're consistent." The air felt heavier with every second. My stomach tightened, but I smiled. "Actually, I wanted to share something today." They all turned toward me, curious. Even Caleb paused his game. "I've been working on a personal project, and I think everyone should hear it." I connected to the Bluetooth speaker sitting on the mantel, the same one Dad loved for his jazz playlists. A soft chime echoed. Then I pressed play. At first, there was only static. Then my mother's voice filled the room. "She'll end up alone, still chasing childish dreams. We gave her every opportunity. She's an embarrassment." My father's voice followed, calm, cutting. "Ethan makes us proud. She's just not enough." The words rolled through the air like thunder. For a moment, no one breathed. Even the sound of Caleb's toy car stopped. June's teacup clinked against her saucer, her hand trembling. "Richard, Linda, you said that." Mom's face drained of color. "That was private," she snapped. Dad straightened. "Chloe, turn that off, now." I didn't move. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Afraid they'll see who you really are?"
Nancy, who'd been invited at June's request, stood abruptly. "My God," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "I knew you two were cold, but this is cruelty." Dad tried to defend himself. "You don't understand." "Oh, we understand," Nancy cut in. "You've spent years tearing her down to build your pride." Ethan stood, his face pale. "You actually said that to her?" he asked, disbelief cracking his voice. Mom's lips trembled. "We were worried about her future." "No," Ethan said sharply. "You were worried about your image." Grace reached for his arm, eyes glistening. "Let them speak, Ethan." "But I didn't let anyone speak for me. I've spent my life trying to be enough for you, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. You praised Ethan for being perfect, but you never saw me for who I was. You didn't just hurt me, you erased me." Mom's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stop. "This recording isn't revenge, it's truth. You've hidden behind silence for years. Not anymore." June rose slowly, gripping her cane, her voice thin but fierce. "I raised you better than this," she said to my parents, her voice trembling with both fury and heartbreak. "I am ashamed of what you've become." Dad opened his mouth, but words failed him. Mom reached for my arm. "Chloe, please, we didn't mean—" I stepped back. "You did. You always meant it." The room was quiet except for June's shaky breathing. Nancy crossed her arms, eyes sharp as glass. Ethan looked at me, his voice breaking. "I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry." Something in me softened, but not enough to undo years of pain. "I'm not looking for apologies," I said gently. "I just needed to stop pretending." For the first time, I felt free. Not triumphant, just real. I turned off the speaker. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream, but it didn't scare me. It felt clean, like fresh air after a storm. June moved closer, her hand warm in mine. "You're more than enough, baby," she whispered. I smiled through tears. I finally believed that. Around us, the family fell apart in slow motion. Mom crying quietly, Dad retreating, Ethan staring at the floor. But I didn't feel small anymore. For the first time in my life, I stood taller than the noise.
It's been 6 months since that Sunday. Sometimes I still hear the echo of that recording in my sleep, not because it hurts, but because it reminds me that silence has a sound. The sound of swallowing your worth just to keep the peace. I don't do that anymore. After the confrontation, things in my family broke apart quietly. There were no dramatic scenes, no slammed doors, just distance. My parents didn't call for weeks. When they finally did, I let it ring. They sent texts, long, apologetic, full of words that sounded right but felt rehearsed. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, but because I needed space to breathe without flinching. Ethan reached out, though. He came by one afternoon, holding a box of my old home movies. "You filmed everything," he said, smiling softly. "I never realized how much heart you put into it." We watched a few clips together. Grandma June singing, Nancy laughing over burnt cookies, me with braces and a camcorder twice my size. When the screen faded to black, he turned to me. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was real. June still calls every morning asking about my latest project. Her health is fading, but her spirit never does. She told me the other day, "Truth may break things, but lies break people. You chose right, sugar." Nancy visits every Sunday with cinnamon tea and gossip from the neighborhood. She says I look lighter, and she's right. My shoulders aren't hunched anymore. And Ben, he helped me launch something new, a small media company called Root Light Studios. We make short documentaries about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Teachers, veterans, caregivers. Stories that remind others they matter. Funny how telling my story gave me the courage to help others tell theirs. I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, into a small apartment that smells like pine and paint. The windows face the mountains. Every morning, sunlight spills across my desk where I write, edit, and dream. The loneliness still visits sometimes, especially on holidays, but it doesn't scare me. It sits beside me quietly, like an old friend who understands. One evening, I opened YouTube and posted my first video titled, "The Night I Stopped Earning Love." It wasn't fancy, just me in front of my camera, speaking honestly about everything that happened. No music, no effects, just truth. I expected a few views. Instead, thousands of comments poured in. People from everywhere wrote, "I heard my own mother in your story. You made me realize I'm not crazy. I finally feel seen." Reading those messages, I cried. Not from sadness, but from recognition. It wasn't revenge I'd wanted all along. It was understanding, connection, freedom. Now when I think about my parents, the anger has cooled into something softer. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acceptance. They built their world on perfection. I chose truth. We can't live in the same house anymore, but that's okay. I've learned that healing isn't about getting the apology. It's about writing your own ending. If you've listened to my story all the way here, thank you. And if you've ever been told you're not enough, by family, by friends, by anyone, hear me now. You are enough. You always were. Don't wait for someone else to hand you worth that's already yours. Stand up. Speak your truth. Build your own peace. And if my story reminded you of your own, share it in the comments below, because maybe your truth is the light someone else has been waiting for.